Let me say this to y'all. Hear me very, very well. You have to understand that you come from greatness. And listen to this. Whatever you come from, we should live as though we are improving generation to generation. Either we give ourselves to degradation or we give ourselves to the more that God has for us. And if you've had a place where you've lived under a hippie's tent in the woods, and that's how your childhood started, and you say, man, that was wild. Let me tell you something. God made you durable. You got something to say. If you grew up in a tiny little double-wide trailer on a dirt farm where your parents were barely surviving every year, but you laughed a lot, then you had something. You have something that you've learned in that. And so what I don't want to do is just throw away what it is you went through. Listen, God is the Father of us all, and He has been designing our life all the way along. He's been designing it and preparing it. As much as we want to fight Him about it, He knew what you went through. He knew what you were going to do. He knew what you were going to go through. It was by His design. You say, Cleve, it wasn't God's design that my dad would become an alcoholic and that he would abandon me. No, but God in His design knew that your dad would make choices and He would still have His hand on you and say, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to use it as an excuse? Come on. Or are you going to do something about it? When is it too late? When is it too late? Did you know that Lester Summerall didn't even start his worldwide evangelistic ministry until he was 53 years old? I want you to think about that for a second. We think we're so late. Some of us in our 40s, we feel like we're late. Some of us in our 50s, we feel like we're late. Some of us in our 60s, we feel like we're late. Listen, God knows and He is on time. But we have to decide that we're going to live for something and not be afraid and not be apologetic and do something with it and go for it and be brave and have faith. Because God's designed every person in this room for something. And He loves you. And here's the thing, the Father wants to do it with you. How many of you believe that every word in the Bible, I say this all the time, every word in the Bible is where it's supposed to be? Do you believe that every one of the 66 books was laid out right where it's supposed to be? Okay, then I want you to turn to the last book of the Old Testament. So if that's hard for you to get to, go to the first book of the New Testament, Matthew, and turn back a page and a half. That was kind of a smarty thing to say. But you know, to be honest with you, I was looking for it in the Old Testament. And then I just went, I could go to Matthew and just turn back a page. There's any verse that God could have left is the last verse in the Old Testament, but He leaves this verse. And I'm going to read this verse to you. Not only is it the last two verses of the Old Testament, but it's going to prepare the way for what the New Testament begins with. So I'm going to read it to you. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. What is the great and dreadful day of the Lord? Somebody tell me. The rapture, the return of Christ, the return of Jesus. I'm going to say something to you all. We have got to be careful about becoming such a modern church that we throw away the ancient truths. We cannot throw away what the Word says. And the Word says that there's a day coming when Jesus is going to return for His saints. The Bible says in the book of 2 John that if anybody teaches that He will not return, to go away from that person, for they are of the spirit Antichrist. So when you hear somebody say to you, well, I don't believe that, this whole thing about the tribulation and the return of Jesus, because it's just a little too much for me to believe. Guess what? They are giving voice to the spirit of Antichrist. That also creates something. A.W. Tozer said it this way. He said, the challenge with the modern church is that she has lost her apocalyptic expectation. That means the thing in her that goes to bed and says, Jesus, tonight you could return while I'm laying in my bed. Jesus, right now, I need to deal with this thing and not say tomorrow, because this thing ain't going with me where I'm going. I don't want to stand before you and you have to wipe away some tears from my eyes because I said maybe tomorrow I'll start being faithful at the church. Maybe tomorrow I'll start being a giver. Maybe tomorrow I'll have faith for simple things in life. See, we got things backward in the church. We say, God, I'll start giving when you start blessing. And God says, I'm not going to start blessing till you start giving. And that's not some preacher trying to talk you into something. It's just not talking about money. It's talking about perspiration. It's talking about love. It's talking about relationship. It's talking about friendship. We say, God, I want friends. And God says, then be a friend. The Bible says that. He says, God will give friends to the friendly. Listen, we don't live in the world's kingdom. We live in a beautiful upside down kingdom. The humble go up and the proud go down. We live in a kingdom where the givers increase and the increasers don't give. Meaning if it's all about my increase and I'm not willing to give, that it means that there's something in you that hasn't become a child of God yet. And I'm telling you right now, God's not going to go with the spiritual IOU. I have a man that used to tell me, I'll start giving when God blesses my business. He went broke 4 more times until he started giving, even financially. I'm saying some things today. See, we don't want to talk about this now. Now, I don't want to talk about this. I live in the Bay Area. My budget's already tight. What are you asking of me? Don't get in that space. I don't want that space. Never mind. I think I'm going to stop going to church now. Listen, the mystery of my life is that in tight times when I gave, God gave more. When I was feeling selfish and I got past myself and I went down and did what I needed to do, that God blessed me for it. That when I wanted to take a nap and I needed to get up from my nap and go do what God was asking me to do, I did it. See, what we've done in modern churches, we've made everything convenient. We've said if it's convenient, then I'm supposed to do it. If it's inconvenient, I'm not supposed to do it.